This episode of Reckley Pros Podcast is sponsored by Anchor. If you don't know what Anchor is already, figure it out already. It is the way to start up your very own podcast. You want to be just like me, you want to be the next biggest thing in Apple, Spotify, Google, Breaker, whatever it may be. Anchor is the place for you. All right. You can distribute on all platforms, all the major ones. You can edit right from Anchor itself, add music, sound effects, etc. And on top of that, too, you can start making money with zero minimum listenership. It is a no-brainer. Go download Anchor if you want to start your own podcast today. And how you're going to do that? You're going to go and download the Anchor app on the App Store, Android Store, whatever it may be, or you're going to go to anchor.fm, start your podcast today. Again, go download the Anchor app on your phone, tablet, etc., or go to anchor.fm, get started making your own podcast today. Don't miss out on the opportunity to become successful. All right, let's roll into the intro. All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Rec League Pros. Thank you again for tuning in. We are now on our 9th episode. Pretty crazy to think about in the last couple months that we're this far already, and the guests have just been getting better and better. But I want to thank everyone so far that's come along this far in the journey and are continuing to give the support and so on for this podcast to grow. So I really think that. If you're new here, though, what I want you to do is, if you're watching on YouTube, go hit that subscribe button. All right, subscribe, like, comment, do all that fun stuff. All right, and if you don't, well, you're not doing the YouTube thing right. You're supposed to subscribe. You're supposed to like. You're supposed to comment. You're supposed to look at my link in descriptions below. I don't have anything besides all my social handles and so on, but look at those as well too. Go follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Go follow Rec League Pros Instagram. We're on TikTok now, guys, all right? Go follow my TikTok for all the latest clips of Rec League Pros and so on. I'm going to have those up on my TikTok. So, no dice rolls, no whip and nay bullshit that's on there. It's just me just talking to my guests and so on. So please go follow me on TikTok. Go give my stuff a like. I'm trying to be mainstream, man. I'm trying to be hip. I'm trying to be cool. I'm not getting any younger. So go give us that support for sure. But thank you for everyone so far. And if you haven't listened to any of the previous episodes, go give them a listen. My last one was with Zach Hart, who is a pitcher in the minors right now for the Lynchburg Hillcats. Great guy. From Franklin Pierce as well too, so really helped out, and I'm enjoying this. My next guest, though, and this was a really cool one for me. I hadn't talked to him in years. This is the first time I reached out to him about a week or so, or at this point when this airs, a couple weeks ago. But none other than Joel Torres. Some people know him as Ian Lasco. He was an artist. At one point getting into the rap game and was pretty good at it. Remember 4 Bar Fridays with Damian Lillard? The dude got featured on it. I mean, he could spit some bars, man. He could spit some bars. But he was a very, very incredible artist, talented, very driven as well too. Currently, right now, he has a master's from USC in business, and he, on top of that, has started his own sports MMA news network. I believe it is called, if I double check very quickly, Scrap News. Go follow them on Instagram. Go check out their website. They're a very, very informative news network, and they're not about the guys on top right now, but the guys that are on the come up, and they're about more than just the athlete. They're about the story, the upbringing, and it's very cool to watch. He's got about 15 writers right now for Scrap News all throughout the world, and they're just slowly growing an empire, and I think there's more to come for this news outlet. So go give him a look for sure. And on top of that, he got into the agency world. He has about 5 fighters right now, and there's a lot of talent that is within those fighters. He's currently with Dodge Sports. The co-founder and owner is his business partner. He has about his co-part has about 11 fighters. He has 5, and he's working on a couple more. But just seeing the realm of the MMA and how that side of the business works, and hearing about kind of the patches where it needs work, and he's shining light on it and trying to make a difference, I think is really, really inspiring, really cool to see. And it was a privilege to listen to him for sure. This is a really fun podcast for me as well. I enjoyed this one, especially because I've just gotten into becoming a fan of the MMA, the UFC, Bellator, LFA, etc. Learning the sport and getting comfortable with knowing, the fighters and the weight classes and so on. It's so entertaining, and the sport's only growing. So, without further ado, Rec League Pros, Episode 9, Joel Torres. Let's roll right into it. I'm done talking. We're going to roll right in the clip right now. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Of course, brother. How's it going?
It's been going, man. It's been going. Just working and doing this on the side and so on. So, looks like you're pretty busy, though, huh?
Try to stay busy, yeah.
Understatement, man. So, I wanted to get you on primarily because your path in life, in terms of just your career, you dabbled in a lot of different things, and I see you as a person that's very creative when it comes to their personal goals and aspirations. And what you're doing right now in the world of MMA is like a prime example of that. But before we dive into that, because that's going to be like half the topic in of its own, because I'm so curious. I want to start off with kind of like your upbringing, because I know you're from Fitchburg, correct, Mass? So just kind of talk a little bit about your childhood and what growing up in that area was like.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I grew up in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I was there my whole life. I was born there as well, one of the last few people to actually be born in Fitchburg. And yeah, I mean, I grew up in a single parent home. My father was around, but he didn't live with us, obviously, so he was always there for my big events. And I don't say this as often as I should, but I was pretty much raised by all women. I have 3 older sisters that I look up to. I have an older brother, and then that's kind of was my upbringing. I went to a high school called Monty Tech, where you had to interview to get in, and you kind of learn a trade while you're going to school there, which was pretty cool. You get to kind of build those skills really early on in life. And there I was one of the only guys in my shop, actually. It was a shop full of women called Business Tech. And I remember when I was in high school, I actually did a project on the UFC. And ironically enough, I'm here now. So I grew up in Fitchburg, went to high school there. I actually went to Fitchburg State for about a year. I didn't do too hot, not gonna lie. It was a really weird transition from high school into college. I'm sure you probably went through the same thing. And I wasn't staying on campus, so it just really felt like wasn't doing anything different in life, right? So, yeah, after a year of doing that, I dropped out, decided to work full time for about a year. I ended up managing a water park. I managed a restaurant, and then it was around that time where I was like, man, I don't want to work this hard for the rest of my life. I didn't want to have this type of job for the rest of my life, and I went back to school, and that's where our paths crossed, Franklin Pierce.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you. So I mean, we only overlapped for a year, and for a short period of time, but there's, I mean, I got along with a lot of, I kind of intertwined with some of your group my freshman year a little bit because I was teammates with Logan Sherwood, and he was friends with all your friends and the people you lived with. So, and it's the nice thing about it is a small school. So, and you guys kind of like gave me like a little bit of a pathway, like this is what you want to do at this school. You want to be involved. You want to, and like also have fun at the same time. So, so I didn't realize that you weren't there your freshman year. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, actually, I was at Pierce my freshman year. Like, I started over again, man. I was like a freshman all over again, so I had to start from the very beginning.
Right.
Did my 4 years. I did them 2 years later, but still got them done.
Yeah, no, I mean, you went back. That's the impressive thing. I think when people drop out, sometimes they're just like, that's it. They don't touch the education aspect ever again, And kudos to you for going back, and especially like actually trying to take in the college experience too, which I think you thrived in a little bit, considering your artistic mind a little bit. So I know you got your bachelor's degree in education, but what some people might not know about you that I know about you, and some Franklin Pierce people know about you, is you dabbled a little bit with music. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think I still have an album you made from your senior year somewhere on my phone in Apple Music, and just talk to me about that and how that kind of started out.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, man, I used to do the whole rapping thing, and it was fun, man. I think it really shaped my college experience. I met a lot of people. I was able to, do shows. I was able to really just hone my talent in the middle of nowhere, because that's where Franklin Pierce is. So, that, man, I was writing for a long time before that. And when I went to Franklin Pierce, I met Alexandria Smith, who goes by the name of Piff Smith. She was, I think, a year ahead of me, if I'm not mistaken. So randomly, we were both English majors, and we were in a lot of like English classes at the time. And I knew her by her actual name. I got introduced to her by her rap name, and after that, like, first session with her, we kind of just hit it off, and it kind of just gave me the confidence to pursue it, have some fun with it while I was in college. Like I said, I thought it shaped my experience. I got to meet a lot of people, and it's weird when you think back at it, how it kind of just shapes what's to come, and you don't even know it. So yeah, man, I had a lot of fun with it. I continued to do it after college, even when I was working, for my corporate job following graduation. And then I went to grad school, and that's a whole nother beast. So I kind of stopped writing, but my brain's always on the go, like that definitely started making me realize that I had this whole creative side to me that I felt like I needed to express. And I didn't want to work the regular 9-to-5 job. So, to your point earlier, like I was always chasing something, whether it was my dream or someone else's. And yeah, it kind of just molded everything to today.
Well, and I mean, you're kind of being like super like humbled out and under the rug, but the way you kind of blew up with it for like a small amount of time, where So your alias, your rapper name, I remember, I remember Ian Lasco, which was, and I forget the story you gave me behind it. I think you were just trying to come up with just like a random name. And the time I realized you actually rapped was when Damian Lillard was doing the 4-Bar Fridays.
Oh yeah.
And he reposted you on one of the 4-Bar Fridays, and I wish I was trying to find that video actually last night, and I couldn't find it, and I was so pissed because that was like I was like pretty blown away, and then like a couple of weeks later, I think it came over to your efficiency, and you had they gave you like a JBL speaker.
In the wish, and I want to see a place where people can be bigger and be better than imagined, but instead we're being bitter. I want to be defined by everything that I bring, not the color of my skin and how I never had things. We need to love ourselves and then I plan it. I'm not trying to bring upon you what our schools are lacking.
It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, dude, that was crazy. I think that was like one of the moments where I was like, all right, like I can probably do something with this, even if I don't take it all the way. Getting the connections that you need to eventually break through, whether it's for me or someone else, that kind of just all happened so randomly. And I was hustling at it so long, man. And it was like, even after school, because if I'm not mistaken, I think I'd gotten that while I was in my senior year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like right towards the end. And I think I was trying to finish up my EP, or I had just finished it. And I was just starting to feel a lot more confident in my craft. And yeah, man, to get the repost by Dame Lillard was crazy. 4-Bar Friday was the platform that I think really just helped shape the artist that I was becoming at the time, because there's just a whole bunch of creatives always posting, right? Like every single week. So, I got to link up with a few of those people. I got the free speaker out of it. And I actually saw it. If I'm not mistaken, I went through 4-Bar's like timeline maybe a month ago, and it was kind of giving me the itch.
Yeah.
It's yeah, man, it's crazy. It was cool. It was cool. I was actually writing today. I'll write from time to time. I feel like my brain's gonna explode if I don't. So, I take my moments whenever I can.
Right. I mean, and I kind of feel like anyone that kind of falls into that realm has gotten some notoriety and some success with it. Like, even if they take a step back from it, or always have that mindset of like, they'll hear, something triggers them, and they're like, oh, I gotta write, I gotta figure it out. It's like anyone that's in the entertainment industry has that type of mindset, whether it's comedians, rappers, like any artist in general is always gonna like have that tick in their brain that just like gives them the edge again to like at least go back to it. So I don't know. I always thought that was that was so cool and fascinating at the time, because like if you think about it, because 2016, like I think of that time period where like Instagram was like newer, people were trying to figure out the platform and what it really was going to be, and all this stuff was coming in on, like the music realm, 4-Bar Fridays, and then like doing things of that nature. Stories were becoming a thing on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's all these creative ways that social media can be used, and then obviously there was what TikTok was back then, which is like Musical.ly, and people were doing stuff like that, and like the whole it was. It was such a different time period, like where we are now with Instagram, where it's like in Twitter and everything, where like your business is at the touch of a thing, at the touch of a button is so surreal.
It's crazy. Yeah, a lot of people can really make a living doing this. You hit on Musical.ly / TikTok. Ironically enough, I was one of the first people on that platform getting what was it called? I used to get featured a lot, like on their main, so I have videos that have like, over 100K and a whole bunch of comments and likes and stuff. And then when TikTok bought it out, I ended up getting verified from being an early user. But yeah, man, like you said, it's crazy time that we live in, and you have to really utilize what you have at your fingertips. I think a lot of people when they graduate, they sort of fall off because they start getting into the simple, like same old routine of life where you're waking up at 7, getting to work by 8, you work till 4 or 5, whatever it may be. You're in traffic, you're heading back home, and for me, I wanted way more out of life. So I try to stay relevant with social media. It's huge for what I do now too, especially with recruiting fighters and, just ensuring that they have content to repost. Social media is such a critical in anything. If I was still doing rap, if I was still, still doing I ended up doing what you're doing now. I used to, interview a lot of people and fighters and whatnot before I got into the sport. So, yeah, man, isn't it crazy to see how much it's evolved and how you can really start making money just.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I'm just getting kind of like dabbled into this right now. I find I'm like teaching myself in manners of like how an algorithm works, how to get my posts featured on that, how to grow a fan base, and so on. And it's a process, it's a grind, but I think when you're interested in doing stuff like this, it's not about like, to me, like the numbers and like you're not doing it for the fame, you're doing it for the self-enjoyment and like the satisfaction of like, seeing results and like in growing. If you're in it just to be like, oh, I want to be famous and make millions of dollars, then you're never going to be successful at stuff like this. So,
Totally agree.
Yeah, but so kind of after college and everything, just kind of like touch briefly on it. So you moved out to Colorado, and then you went back to school and you got your master's at USC.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to go back to school?
Well, honestly, I wasn't going to go back to school. I felt like throughout my entire collegiate experience and before that, I felt like I was always home to home and I never had just like a stable place to stay. A lot of it, was self-inflicted because I always had family, but, I was always hustling. I was always trying to strive for more. So, it wasn't in the plans. I was just going to work my full-time job, continue to do music on the side. I had producers flying in. I actually moved to Maryland, like Virginia area first before I moved to Colorado.
Gotcha.
My job there allowed me to come here, which was nice. So about 6 months after moving there, I came here and I knew this was where I had to be. And about maybe like 4 months into getting my apartment downtown, I ended up babysitting or dog sitting. I call him, he's my baby anyways, but I ended up dog sitting my friend's dog. She had to go away for a funeral. And then when she came back, she was basically telling me that she had to give him up. And I was like, nope, I'm taking him. And he's been with me since. And it just felt right. It felt right. I was like, all right, I have a dog. I'm going to be home more.
Yeah.
I might as well go back to school. My job's paying for it. And, I just had to find the right program. And man, I freaking landed on the best one possible, where it was like, just like a whole bunch of creative geniuses all in one program that you get to learn from. And, I had a whole bunch of internships and things of that nature that were really able to just mold the professional that I am today. So yeah, I wasn't planning on it. It just kind of came up and I'm super grateful. I'm a Trojan now.
Yeah. I mean, that's a nice little piece of paper you have and something to put in the resume every time you're kind of like back in the realm of like looking for jobs in the professional field and so on. So, I mean, that's super cool because it's one struggle enough as is to go for your bachelor's degree. Like for me, it's like I'm not a school person, so that's to me like I don't think I'll ever go back to school. For someone that's like that's willing to put in the effort to go for the Masters. Like I owe like props to anyone that does that. So honestly, like props to you to do it at a school like that. That's a sense of like, you know, accomplishment and like, you know, you have some type, you hold your head a little higher and so on, and walk with your chest out a little bit. You know what I mean? So that's super cool. Now I want to get into kind of like the MMA field. So you graduate college, you get your master's degree. What was like kind of like the next thing up? Because like when I've been following you on Instagram and so on for the amount of time I have, like I knew you kind of like dabbled with the MMA stuff, but I didn't really know how much. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing like you as like an agent now. You have your own like news company, like you're founding a news company, and like you're with all these different platforms now. So like what started this all?
Yeah, man. I mean, I've always been a fan of MMA. Did I think I'd work in the sport? No, hell no.
Yeah.
Never in a million years. If I'm honest, I was always just a fan from afar. And when I was going through my program, so I don't know if you've ever heard of the USC design program, but essentially it's a degree in disruption. You know, you're coming into a field and you're finding something that works, that's people-centered, and it's just going to change the whole industry. And I feel like every semester I was building a new business and I was learning how to pitch to investors and, you know, taking a project from ideation all the way into completion. That was just happening literally every semester. Every single semester was a new business. So, you know, just finding the love for being a disruptor in any field. I think it was like midway through my experience at USC, I was like, when I'm done, I'm fucking done playing around. I'm gonna chase my dream. You know, like I just got tired of my own shit. I feel like some people, in order to grow, you have to get tired of your own shit. You know, what's gonna get you out of bed. And I knew the sport. I loved it so much. I used to cover it maybe a couple of years back, but I didn't like some of the criteria that they put in order for your piece to get published when you work for, you know, a bigger site. So I was like, all right, let me make my own. I feel like I have things that people want to hear. You know, I want to tell stories for people who need it most. I don't want to interview the big stars of tomorrow. I want to interview the regional talent who are going to be the next big thing eventually. So I found a big passion in that. I remember having a website. After grad school, I learned so much, man, because it's a degree in design, business, and tech. So you're learning how to code. You know, you're going through your design classes and you're getting, you know, your work heavily critiqued, and you're just learning different aspects of business if you were ever to go work for like a corporate place. So putting all that stuff together, I ended up revamping my site that I already had, and I just took it to a whole new level, man. I had so much knowledge from this program that I was able to code the whole thing. I was designing everything for it. I ended up just getting a really small staff of people that I knew that love the sport, and we just went for it. And 3 years later, the site is one of the fastest rising combat sports news hubs that you're going to see today. And, you know, we really strive to be different. It's not going to be the same interview. It's not going to be the same content. We really want to learn the readers, have fun with lists, rankings, right? All that good stuff. So yeah, man, it grew. It's now, I want to say I have over 15, 16 writers from all over the world. And I mean all over the world, like UK, Spain, Puerto Rico, United States. I think we have one in India, and I have one in Scotland, you know, so, and a whole bunch in Canada. So, you know, it's kind of just grown. And as you kind of talk to people in your new passion, right? Like as I started to meet new people, talk to fighters, I really started to listen to their stories and hear the shitty stuff, right? Like the deep stuff, the heavy stuff, how this sport doesn't make enough money. you are fighting for such a small paycheck, man, and you sacrifice so much of your life in camp, right? I started realizing that a lot of agents, they're so outdated. And I mean no disrespect to a lot of the ones I look up to, but they're outdated in the sense of there's no creativity in the sport, right? So I kind of find that need for it, that love for it. And I was like, hey man, if I could help change a fighter's life and do it the right way, I want to do this for the rest of my life. So that's kind of the transition of how it all happened. But I didn't expect it. I'll tell you that. It came a lot faster than I anticipated.
I mean, you know, the interesting thing about the MMA world, right? Because it's a newer form of the fighting realm of the sport, right? Because when you think about, what fighting was in the 70s, in the 80s, you think of boxing. 90s, you think of boxing. When the 2000s came along, and credit to a guy like David White, who was just like, we need something new. There's no real athletic skill in watching two guys kind of dance around in the ring for 9 to 10 rounds, and then towards the end of the fight, then they start throwing haymakers. It's not being enjoyable, and you're not seeing like the next big fighter. Because really, the last two like wow factor guys at the time period to me were Manny Pacquiao and Floyd. And then after that, you're just kind of like, great, like, you see, your boxing is really not the same thing as it used to be. And now what's being revamped by it is this social media thing. And kudos to those guys for going and making a buck, but that's what's keeping professional boxing relevant. And when the MMA came in, you're like, people knocked it and so on, but it brings every form of fighting to the table, which is why I think you have so many writers with Scrap News, because it's a universal sport where you're using wrestling, you're using jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, boxing itself. It's every form of fighting. And every fighter will tell you, you have to have learned a form of each of these, styles of fighting in order to be successful at the sport. So, and bring it back to your point of like agents being outdated, I think, in my opinion, you probably saw these agents taking a chance in the MMA realm that probably came from the boxing world, but took boxing strategies for their fighters and you're right, don't really care about the fighter itself. So I think it's very admirable for someone like you that realizes that and is taking full advantage for their clients that you have now and the clients you'll have to come. You know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what you're kind of hinting at is, because boxing, like, I'll tell you this, even when it hit its low points, there's still a lot of money in boxing. Mm-hmm. But what you see in boxing is that there's too many big promotions, so you never really get to know who the best is. I think today you're getting more super fights than ever before, and you're really getting guys unifying those belts, right? So that's nice to see. But in boxing, there was a time where the best guys didn't want to fight each other. They just wanted to rack up their records and their legacies, and not necessarily having to push themselves to the limit, because there was no one promotion under all, right? Whereas the UFC, don't get me wrong, there's other promotions, but they're kind of the cream of the crop right now, right? And it might be mainstream now, but it's going to get even bigger. So it's still new. And man, I wish that a lot more boxing agents did come over to MMA. I think, actually, believe it or not, a lot of them didn't. And that's why, Yeah, well, there's too much money in boxing, right? So when you have a guy fighting for 250,000, right? To give you a comparison, somebody starting out in the UFC only makes 20. Unless they get a KO of the night or a performance of the night that gives them an additional 50K. So there's no way in hell a boxing agent's going to come to MMA and take 10% off of a $20,000 paycheck, right? So, unfortunately, we don't get a lot of that expertise coming into our sport. I think we can learn a lot from boxing, but I think MMA has its own path, to the top. I think the reason why a lot of the people, in my opinion, are so outdated in this sport is simply because they've been in it for so long. There hasn't been any change. And in my opinion, when you don't see change for so long in a sport that's been around for 25 years, people are just content with what's there, right? So, if I ever get to a point where I can create change, I mean, I would love it. I'd love to explore different types of contracts. Look what the NFL is doing compared to what the UFC is doing. We're independent contractors in the sport. You don't get paid if you don't fight. If you get injured in football, you still get your paycheck, right? So I think the sport has a lot to evolve, and I hope that more creative, business people come into it. But until then, I think, you're kind of stuck with just a lot of people who are content doing well and don't want anyone to do better. So
Yeah.
we're going to keep the sport where it's at.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and that makes sense then too. So kind of going back a little bit on the news side of it, because like I said, you did start your own company. So by you not fitting the criteria, are you going along with just the minimum requirements for to be a writer for a certain outlet, in the sense of you need minimum of 5 years experience, you need stuff like that, or is it just like the format of your style of writing?
I think, if I ever went that route, it would be, honestly, I can't even think about it. I don't think we'd ever go that route. We don't really have a minimum criteria or anything like that. We pride ourselves in being a place where somebody can get their first start.
Oh, no. What I meant was when you were starting out, trying to do that, and when you were with different media outlets, not with Scrap News. Well, that's where I was getting at. So was that the requirement part? Is what I was getting at?
No, because I think at the time when I was doing it, I think I was still in high school, so I didn't really have much experience other than maybe a course or here and there.
Mm-hmm.
What mainly turned me off is that you're kind of being told what to write, or you kind of get into the swing of writing the same thing over and over, just different weeks because there's a different card or a different headliner. So I got bored of that. I wasn't able to post things like who are the top, 4 people in this division that deserve a title shot. Over at a big news source, they probably just want you to cover the event. And I want to do more things like, hey, what's your, let's talk about your favorite anime. Let's talk about you outside of the cage so that people can get to know you. That's one of the things that's lacking in this sport. You see a fighter and you're like, they're tough. Sure, she's tough as hell. But you don't realize that they're human and they're probably just as chill and down to earth as you are. So, I wanted to tell more of those stories. And I felt like working for the bigger outlets, you often talk about just the fighting piece.
Right. Yeah. I think that's where you're starting to see ESPN losing a lot of their ESPN's going to fall off a cliff at some point. They've been the mecca of the sports world for so long, but they've fallen into this trap of being politically correct. Has to be. The stereotypical headline of something. It's all about the numbers, the stats, and so on. And that's not just for just your mainstream sports like basketball, soccer, football, baseball, etc. It's MMA stuff too, with the UFC, Bellator, and so on. It's about the record. It's about their style of fighting and so on. And it's not, you're right, it's not about the person, it's not about the personality and determination, how much, and like the backstory of how hard they've been working to get to, this upcoming title fight or, this fight against a ranked opponent and so on. So, yeah, you're not seeing much of that. And I think it's going against the grain, but you're seeing like smaller news outlets now that are doing that, rising quicker, and then ESPN's kind of trying to come along the coattails and take over, and people are now noticing that. And I think, to me, when I started noticing it, was when you're now seeing the empire of Barstool Sports is, where it's like they're a gambling company and a gambling sports company, like their bread and butter is gambling, and they've taken it to such a huge level now where ESPN's like, well, now we got to get into it, and it's like, good luck, because they're a monster. I don't think they're going to be able to take over like other things are. So it's like, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's like I noticed that, like, especially the older news outlets are always going to be like, you have to be this type of person as a writer, and like, kudos to you being like, no, I'm doing my own thing. So
yeah. It's important, man. It's critical. I feel like people work best when they have creative freedom. So, I normally, whenever we hire someone, it's just like, go, you're free. You don't ask me for permission. If you think about it too much, then that means you probably shouldn't write it. And that's just kind of the motto there.
Right. And then in that realm too, it's like, when did it, because I mean, I've seen the website. I mean, your writers are the people that you have on board do a fantastic job writing, and your social media following for the amount of time that you've had this started. Because I think you started I want to say 2017. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think end of 2018.
End of 2018. Okay, so in a short time period, I mean, your Instagram followings around 14,000 followers, which is really impressive, man, for just a specific sport. And, that's a grind in itself, but to get to that point, that's impressive.
It's work, man. I think a lot of people don't realize how much time and effort is put into it. And I think, it's awesome where it's at now, but it could have been even bigger. I think, when I started transitioning into into the business side of the sport, obviously I had to take a fall back, and especially because, you don't ever want to get to a point where there's a conflict of interest with media and working on the other side of things. So, having to take a step back from it, I think it suffered. But it's nice to be able to hire people now and appoint them into the jobs, whereas in the past we weren't able to do that. So, I hope it's going to grow. I hope it doubles. We're actually working on bringing a lot of more YouTube content, more informative, knowledgeable content. I think you're probably the first person that I've told this to, but the goal was always to change the game, and we're not going to change the game doing the same old. So it's time to start putting more knowledge in fighters' pockets, having that access available for fighters to start getting more knowledgeable about the sport, because I think the smarter fighters get, the more knowledgeable fighters get, the least likely that these outdated people in the business side of things will take advantage of them. So we hope that it just continues to evolve the sport, because there's nothing out there, man. Sometimes I talk to fighters and first thing they tell me is, I don't know how to navigate. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I don't think that I'm worthy of a sponsorship. Anyone's worthy of a sponsorship if you have something to bring to the table, right? So we want to teach them how to do it, when to do it, the right ways to do it, and the right questions to ask whenever you're getting scouted.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. That's okay. That's a big news then. All right. Dropping the ball here. Awesome. All right. I'll take that. I'll take that and put that as a clip for sure. Um, so kind of going off the top of the news side a little bit, I want to dive into you becoming an agent. Kind of brushed on it a little bit. So when did you realize you had the potential to be able to do it? And then when did Dodge Sports come into play for you?
Yeah. I'm pretty confident in my abilities and what I bring to the table. So I always knew I could do it. It was a matter of who was going to give me the chance to do it. This is a sport. And unfortunately, in any, and even in the NFL, if you wanted to become an NFL agent, or an MLB agent, or MLS agent, to break in is hard if you're not starting your own. So I always teetered with the thought of, well, do I just do it on my own and hustle and eventually make it? Or, do I try to work for somebody? But then, when I thought of that, I always hit a wall because no one's just handing out opportunities to a random person who has no experience in the sport. So I knew I had to create my own opportunity. And, learning things through the media side of and how to book interviews, I started to see that there's specific roles, for people to do that. I decided to reach out to Matt Dodge at the time. And I was just like, hey, can I interview any of your fighters? He gave me, I think, 2 names. I ended up reaching out to them to interview. After the interviews were done, I fell in love with his fighters, and I fell in love with how good that, how highly they spoke of him. And I knew that was different in this game. So I ended up writing to him, and I was like, hey man, I don't know if you have a team, but I would love to ramp up the PR of Dodge Sports, book your clients for interviews across, media outlets. I have a lot of connects, obviously, managing my own site and hiring a bunch of people who have gone off to work for bigger sites. And I was like, yeah, I would love to do that for you. Is there an opening? He was straight up and he was like, I can't pay you. But so what would you want out of this? And I was like, I want you to teach me the ways. I want to learn how to become an agent. I will do this for free as long as you teach me. And we were doing it for 6 months. I got to learn. I got to read contracts. I got to learn how the sport worked. I got to learn how to recruit. I got to learn how to, what to say on the calls and how to, approach a fighter. I learned about fight promotions, fight contracts, all the good stuff. So 6 months into it, I was like, all right, man, I'm ready. And if you're not ready to sign me as an agent, then I do think I have to move on. And man, the next day I had a contract in my inbox and I became an agent that day. So it's a special story to me. Sometimes you got to hustle. Sometimes you got to do it for free to somebody, for somebody to see what you're worth. And then once you get the chance, man, you got to blow it out the park. So, I kudos to Matt for taking a chance on me. I didn't think anyone would. And I've learned so much, man. I'm so grateful. I kickstarted my career. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I did it on my own.
Yeah, I mean, agencies and that just seem to be such like that. That's the biggest job to me that is a sports brand besides being someone that wants to be in front of the camera and the media. Just because, you're having people put trust in you, and you have to be, if you're not confident within yourself to represent someone and to be able to give them the opportunities they would ever dream of, then it's not this, to me, it's not the space for someone to be doing that. Yeah. So I think that's super cool. Just like someone taking a chance on you, you being willing to put in the time and effort on your own time, not being paid, and just grinding your way to an opportunity. That takes a lot of self-confidence. So that's really cool.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I could only imagine how much time and effort for sure that you put in for that, because that's not just like sitting there and like, just skimming through some paperwork and just learning a business module plan. It's like you have to read the fine print for that stuff. Otherwise, it's like you're gonna screw some people over if you don't.
Oh, dude, and to top it all off, man, I started my career. Literally, the pandemic happened. I signed my contract in October to become an agent. I signed my first fighter in December. The pandemic started the rumblings of the pandemic started in January, and everything shut down in March. So could you fucking imagine? Excuse my language. Could you fucking imagine starting your career in a pandemic? I had 4 fighters signed to me. I'm new, right? And not only am I worried about me and my family and what's happening with the world, I got to worry about each individual fighter, their family, their careers. Did they get fired? What am I going to do? It could have made me or broke me, man. And I'm thankful. I'm just thankful.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And to navigate that too, like that's a tough one as well. So who was your first client?
My first client, his name is Justin Wetzel. He's a bantamweight, fights at 135 pounds, but he's a big guy. He's a big 135er. I think he could fight at 145 and still be comfortable. I saw that there was a local card. My boss, Matt, excuse me, he ended up buying me a ticket, and he was like, "Hey, if I'm going to buy you a ticket, you're going to go recruit." And Justin stood out to me on paper, and I remember reaching out to him, and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm actually going to be there. Let's chat after your fight." The dude gets a freaking, I think it was a 35-second or 45-second knockout in the first round. And I was like, I got to sign this kid. So ironically enough, we ended up chatting right after his fight. I said what I said. He kept me on my toes for about 2 months. I think obviously, no fighter should just sign to anyone after talking to them for the first time. So we had about 2 more meetings after, a couple phone calls with his coaches. I took him to sushi. It's now become a tradition of ours that we go eat sushi and we talk business before a fight. And yeah, man, he's the first fighter to ever give me a shot, and we're so close, dude. He's gonna fight in the UFC next. There's no way.
So is he currently at Bellator, or is this where he's at right now?
No, so he's still on the regional scene.
Regional.
Yeah, he's I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's 7-1 now. We fought for LFA on UFC Fight Pass. Okay. So it's the biggest feeder for UFC ready level talent. We ended up beating a former UFC signee. Justin got him out there in the second round, TKO, and I think he made a statement. I think everyone after the fight knows he's ready for the UFC. I think the commentators also, they said it. He's ready. So, we've had conversations with the UFC. He's close, man. He's so damn close. He's the next one. So we're hoping for an opportunity to come our way in the next few weeks or month or so.
That's really exciting. And then I've also noticed too, so it looks like you might have a couple of clients that have taken part in the Ultimate Fighter recently, or is that?
Yep. My client, Aaron Phillips, he was, if I'm not mistaken, either my third or my fourth client that I signed. He is from Alaska, kind of literally the middle of nowhere, honestly. Like, you'd think Pierce is middle of nowhere. It's like a whole village that not many people know about. But, I got to recruit him. The pandemic happened, halted his career for a little bit. This opportunity came up, and man, he was there for 5 weeks. He lived with me for 3 weeks before going, because in Alaska, there's no resources, there's no gyms, at least where he lives. So he came out here to train for a little bit, was out there for 5 weeks. The show just ended, unfortunately, but man, best experience for him. He just moved to Texas. He now has a gym, and he has all the connections in the world coming from the show. So
Yeah, that's the interesting part about the Ultimate Fighter. To me, why I love it so much in terms of like what the UFC does. You know, and the pain part is always going to be the difficult part because of how relatively new the sport is. But I think they put people in the right positions to get the connections and work their way up to the top dollar with stuff like that. Because here's a scenario where it's like, you know, if you don't necessarily win, you know, the Ultimate Fighter and get the UFC contract that they would give you, then you still are going to be, you still have notoriety from the show itself, and people are going to want to work with you. You don't just go on a show like that and not have some type of talent. It's just when you see some of those guys that go on there, you know, you see guys that have had UFC contracts in the past that have been on that show. You know, people that have, you know, been in some of the other MMA MMA fighting leagues and so on, like Bellator, LFA, and so on, that have had a lot of success that way. So it's not scrubs that are just going on there. So, you know, that's always going to be like a boost of confidence just to be on the show, and then to get off. It's opportunities that just go along the line. I feel like for any fighter that does that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, obviously you want to win the show, right? I think going into it, you know, Aaron and I knew what the show would mean for him in terms of his career moving forward, especially being a little older than the typical fighter in the sport, right? A lot of people now are starting at like 25, even older, right? But they're like getting into their prime at like 25, 26, 27. So Aaron turned 30 right before he went on the show, and we knew that this would change his life in the sense of he's going to start getting recognized more. He's going to get more sponsorships because of it. His following is going to grow. People are going to tune in when he fights now, even if he doesn't fight in the UFC next. If he fights on the regional scene, he's going to carry that anywhere he goes. He's an Ultimate Fighter, right? Like he was on that season. So, yeah, man, it's sometimes you got to make those really critical decisions. This sport is chess, not checkers. So you got to take some risks, but it have to be calculated risks. And this was definitely one of those calculated ones.
Mm-hmm. And what's kind of like the ultimate pitch for you in the sense of like you as an agent talking to a client? Because as you stated before, this is like the agent mindset is to make a dollar, but you're starting to realize now that a lot of agents, like athletes, are becoming educated, and they're a lot smarter now. Where they're not just going to go to a guy that just says all the things that you want to hear, you know. So what's like, because I know you, I've known you as a person, and you're a stand-up guy to begin with. So it's like you're not a no bullshit. Like I'm not going to like just, you know, talk myself up and so on. It's like you tend to want to conversate with someone and get to know someone. So it's like, what's usually your approach that like is kind of like, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but it's like it's a hook. It's your hook to them, but it's like it's not, because you genuinely mean what you say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the toughest part, right? To any agent's job, everyone's going to come in with some form of skepticism right off the back, especially if they've had experiences in the sport with people who weren't so nice or were greedy, or so on and so forth. So I find that job to be the hardest part, is coming off, not necessarily trying to come off genuine, but you're hoping that they receive you as genuine, right? So a lot of recruiting happens on the side first before I even get on a call, right? You know, I'm going through their Instagram. I always joke with my fighters after I sign them, and I tell them I'm a professional stalker. So, you know, you're never not going to get rid of me. I know how to find you. I know how to find footage, you know, all that good stuff. So, you know, a lot of that recruiting happens really early on. And I only get on the phone with people who I feel are genuine, good character people. I think that goes a really long way in the sport. I can do wonders for anyone, but I don't want to just do wonders for anyone. It has to be somebody whose morals are there, who are, they're working hard, so on and so forth. So honestly, when I get on a call, I always remind them that I could talk all I want, but my hard work is going to show for itself. And, I always tell them, why be a big fish, or why be a big fish in a big pond when you could be an individual, you could be a human, you could be not a number. I think a lot of times when you go to these bigger agencies, they treat you as a number and not as an individual. I think your chances to becoming successful in the sport do slightly decrease, because sometimes there's another hype train that they're trying to promote that you might be in the same weight class, right? So I always just try to paint the most realistic picture of the game and let them decide for themselves, because at the end of the day, everyone's going to get to where they deserve to be. It's just a matter of who you want there. And with my expertise, especially, graduating at the University of Southern California, there's a big piece of the puzzle missing at a lot of these big agencies, and that is branding, sponsorships. Any fighter can get a fight for themselves, right? But who's going to give a fuck about you beyond your career and line you up with opportunities that will eventually turn into monetization, and that monetization sets you up for long-term success? I don't care about the 5 years that you're in the sport at your highest. I care about you the whole 10 years of you in it, you out of it, and beyond. So, it's all about painting the most realistic picture possible, giving them actual hard, cold facts and ideas, or not ideas. What's it called? I've done it for so many fighters. Like, here, take a look at what I've done, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I just remind them, I paint the realistic picture. I show them what I'm about. I tell them what I'll do for them. I show them who I've done it for. And then I want to get on the phone with the people who matter most. I don't sign anyone unless I talk to your coach or text your coach, or, if your father's in it, like really invested in your career, because sometimes you'll see, some of the parents that are just helping their kids get into to the next level. I want to talk to dad. I want to talk to mom. I want to talk to the people who matter most. I think so many people are going to tell you not to mix, friends and business. This sport is so different that if you don't want to do that, I don't want to work with you, because I want to know what makes you tick, who motivates you, what you want to eat after your weigh-ins, what you want to eat after a fight. I want to know what your goals are, how we're going to achieve them. So yeah, I paint that picture of, this is what you get. I'm going to be there for your fights. I'm going to be in your corner, win or lose. And then I let them decide. So you just got to hope for the best and hope that they received your genuineness. But it's definitely the hardest part of the sport.
Yeah. Now, how many clients do you currently have right now?
Me personally, I believe I have 5 at this point. My counterpart has maybe 11. So I think in total we have about 15. But I have a ton of guys that, to our point earlier, where I say, let me do the work and let you decide, just like my money talks, bullshit walks kind of thing. I want to show you that I mean what I say. So I work with a lot of fighters to kind of show them the hustle I bring early on before signing. So I have a couple of really, really exciting prospects I'm working with that not a lot of people know about.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So with Dodge too, in total, so how many agents work for Dodge?
There's only 2 of us.
Oh, it's only okay. Wow.
It's small, man. He really instilled this trust in me, and I think it's important to have a small team that work really hard. Right. There's a total of 3 of us, and then we have some outside resources that we bring in, like lawyers and accountants and people really knowledgeable about cryptocurrency and stuff like that. So we have all those outsourced resources, but Dodge Sports itself, the engine, is 3 of us, 2 agents, and then Michael's our PR machine, he's phenomenal.
Nice. I didn't I got the impression that I knew it was a smaller, obviously, agency because it's fairly new, but I didn't realize it was only really 2 agents that are, including yourself. So really, it's one other guy that's running the show with you. Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, I kind of agree with that because it's like I feel like the mom and like the smaller the agency, I feel the more safer maybe an athlete would feel, just because to your point earlier, like the bigger agencies you go to, you're kind of looked at as just a number sometimes. But at some point too, I always like ponder this as well, where there's going to get to a point where obviously you're going to like with the athletes you have, and like obviously you're recruiting and stuff like that, you're going to have some athletes that just hit it big, and then you're going to grow more and more interest. So I always ponder with like the fact of when does it get to the point where you become that big agency, but you're trying, but like how would you instill like the values that you had when you just started out? Because you have to hire more agents. There's going to be more pieces to the puzzle that are going to be a part of the business that make it work, obviously. So yeah, I always wonder that in that way. I feel like, if you stay true to the values, like that's when it works. But, there are times where people fall off the beaten path, and like rightfully so. Sometimes you see the paycheck and you're like, I want more of that. And then they get greedy,
Oh yeah, true. I see it all the time. I mean, that saying, the saying goes is like you work till your rivals or your idols become your rivals or something like that. I've definitely experienced that in the sport. And to your point, seeing somebody get so big and get the taste of it, the paychecks, right? The big league paychecks, to see them then eventually get so greedy. Like I definitely have those blueprints in front of me that keep me humble when I remember those stories. But to your point, right? Eventually you get big, eventually you have to evolve while still keeping your morals. And honestly, the way that I feel like we're going to do it is not necessarily hiring more people. It's hiring the right people when it is time. But more importantly, it's recruiting the right people, because, I think people start to get greedy, and you'll see it when they have like 10 fighters in the same weight class. I may be a little old school in my mentality here, but if somebody has 10 people in your weight class, how can you ensure that you are getting the best opportunities and their full interest, right? Especially if, let's just say I had 10 of them and I put 2 of them to fight each other. Like how does an agent have your best interest if they're doing that to you? And unfortunately, you see that so often in this sport. And that's just something that I pride myself in. So, Matt and I, when we recruit and we talk about growth, it's very strategic growth. It's planned growth. And it is always keeping in mind how much talent in certain weight classes we have, because we do know that at a certain point, having 10 is not in the same weight class is not beneficial for our business plan, especially if they all are around the same record. So, if we do have 4 or 5 in the same weight class, we make sure that one is ready for the UFC, one is still building, and a couple are just starting out. So, you have to, when you think about the life cycle of talent, you always have to consider, who's almost there, who's close, and who's not there yet. And you have to have a little bit of everything on the roster so that the life cycle continues.
Well, right, yeah, you got to have, to that point, then on top of that too, you want to keep, you don't want to have like 5 fighters that are all in bantamweight class, or or the head, or for a heavyweight or whatever. You want, like an even keeled lineup of guys where you have maybe one, maybe 2, one that's already on at the big leagues, one that's on the rise that are both heavyweights, middleweight, lightweight, featherweight, bantam, etc. So I think that's a smart model to have for sure from what it sounds like you guys are doing, because it gets to a point of just like what you have to be strategic in order to hold the values, which is really cool. So
Yeah.
to kind of close out this conversation, the one thing I want to ask is where you see Scrap News going from here on out and evolving, and then where you also see yourself as an agent. You know, you think of like, oh, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years type thing? Where do you see your growth overall as an agent in this industry in the near future?
Yeah, I think, for the Scrap News, kind of like what I hinted at earlier, we're definitely going to take a new innovative approach, more content creation visually, but also more knowledgeable resources to kind of impact and influence the game at a larger scale in a very gradual time frame. So I think we'll still be as big, if not bigger. And I think in 5 years, we will have already have accomplished everything I just said, and it's starting to like come to fruition, right? Like 5 years from now, I do see fighters utilizing these resources in their conversations with recruiters. So that's going to be really exciting to see come to fruition. I definitely see a lot of my writers getting signed by the big money making news sources. And that's always like a shitty thing, but an awesome thing, right? Because you don't want them to go, but they're going to be able to do this full time now and get paid real money. So that's always nice to see. As far as my agents, my agency journey, man, in 5 years, I'm going to definitely have a handful of fighters in the UFC. I think right now I have a lot of talent that are really early on in their careers. I have found the benefit of recruiting early on and really establishing those relationships, because I'm so damn good that the big agencies try to poach my guys. That's definitely realistic. So, in 5 years, these relationships that I'm working on today, I hope really blossom. I hope I have guys in the big leagues, and I hope I'm making impactful change. That's always what I want to remember. I don't want to just come into the sport to be another agent.
Yeah.
I'm damned if that was my goal. So, I'm trying to influence change. So who knows? Maybe it gets me blacklisted in 5 years.
Maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. You'll never know. And actually, no, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Top 5 fighters in the UFC right now, and any weight class.
Any weight class. We'll see. So when I look at fighters, right, I don't just look at them winning and
right,
and their records. I kind of look at the whole picture, like who has the most potential to do big things in the sport. So if I had to pick 5 fighters, definitely I'm gonna go with Sean O'Malley. I think that's a no-brainer. I think he's so smart.
Absolutely.
With how he navigates his career, he's gonna be freaking huge, because he started with social media, whereas like the McGregors kind of went into social media as it came. Sean O'Malley started, so I think he's gonna be huge, man. I do think that Macy Barber is still going to continue to do some big things. She came off the Contender Series as well. I have a talent who's going to be making his UFC debut. I no longer work with him, unfortunately, but I do think he's going to do big things. I still keep in touch with his family, his parents. His name is Nick Maximov. He's actually going to be making his debut at UFC 260, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I think I did see that card, but yeah, I think it's
it's pretty good. It's a pretty good card.
Yeah, it is a good card.
I do think that he has a lot of potential. Let me see, number 4. I think there's a female talent named Cheyenne Buys. She just won recently, and I think she just got rebooked. So you'll be seeing her fight again what sticks out to me about her is like she's mean. Like whenever I use the word mean, that just means like is ruthless in the cage. They show no mercy whatsoever. And even if they show weakness, like they're just so damn good, you know, that they get out of it or and whatnot. So I think she's phenomenal. I think she has a lot of potential. But I think there's one more guy. His name is Ilya Tapora. I think he's undefeated. He's doing some big things. And if I'm not mistaken, he's either Canadian or from Spain. I think it's important for countries to have their first UFC champion. It shows growth in the sport. And I think it really motivates a lot of people. So I always like to look for talent in those underrepresented countries because there's a lot of talent, man, that's left to be seen.
Well, that's the beauty of this sport is it's a universal sport. It's not right now specified to just the U.S. It's what you mentioned. It's there are people that are training and fighting all across the world. You know, that's something that is super. You know, with everything that is going on in the world right now, politically, socially, etc. The one thing that, you know, and it's like, it's kind of like a cliche thing, because like you're beating the crap out of each other in a ring, but like the one thing that is bringing a group of people together is these fights, because you're not going in there and you're not fighting someone because you hate them. You're fighting someone for being able to be looked at as a great fighter, to be a champion of the world, and so on. And there's admiration and respect for you and your opponent, you know, before, during, and after a fight. Because, like, regardless of the trash talk, because there's always going to be trash talk when it comes to this stuff, because there's the ego stuff and so on. But when you always look at like the end of the fight, almost every time you see a level of respect between the two, you know, that fighter and opponent, vice versa, etc. No matter who won or lost, because it's like, I just went this many rounds and I got in here and I fought, you know, whereas millions of people in the world would not say the same. So, you know, that's the beauty of the sport, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. And if I'm honest, in no other sport does a loss really mean a lot. You know, like you can go a whole season, you know, having a couple losses on your record and still become Super Bowl champs. Losses in MMA, though they don't define you, they do set you back a lot more than in any other sport. And, you know, to your point, the pandemic and all that stuff, like Dana White just done a great job just putting things on. And next Tuesday is the start of Dana White's Contender Series. And this season is the first season where it is all international. I mean, obviously there's a few US talent, but you're going to see fighters from legitimately all over the place. And it's so freaking awesome to see. And I think it's really going to show the growth. So definitely tune in every Tuesday night, starting next Tuesday for the next 10 weeks. They're going to have a 5-person fight card on ESPN Plus. We actually have 2 fighters fighting in September, Canadians.
All right, I'll keep that. I'll definitely keep that in mind for sure, man. Because this sport I've quickly eased myself into enjoying this sport. I never thought I would, because I'm not personally into fighting someone, but watching it is like I couldn't even imagine going to an event and seeing it up close and personal, because it's probably a whole different experience. And that's on the bucket list. I'm just waiting for the right place, the right time, the right car. That'll get me going. But that's going to do it for this episode of Reckless Pros. I want to thank you for coming on, my man. It's been a long time. And dude, like the journey for you right now is so incredible to see. You go from, just this small little area in Pittsburgh, Mass, to get a degree at Franklin Pierce, to get your master's, to start your own MMA news company, and to become an agent with no experience, learn, and now have 5 fighters that are on the rise. That is so incredible. I enjoyed this so much. Thank you for coming on. Like, I'm very grateful that you accepted, and this was super cool, man. So then again, guys, thank you for listening, and we're out. So